Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff. And Congressman, I want to ask you about this breaking news on the wiretapping the president's comments. First, though, I want to ask you about the breaking news at this moment. The president, we understand, has just been informed that Hawaii has issued a nationwide temporary restraining order on his executive order, the new and revised one on foreign travelers from 6 countries and refugees. One of the main reasons was because of comments Trump repeatedly made on the campaign trail about banning Muslims. Do you have any concern that this could make the judges seem political, that they're looking at political statements and taking a political stand, or not?
No, I don't think it's a question of the judges being political or looking at political statements. I think what the judges are properly looking at is what was the intention of this executive order, and you can't ignore the legislative and non-legislative history here, particularly if you would learn in discovery more about what Rudy Giuliani said about the Trump administration coming to him and saying, okay, how do we put this Muslim ban in a form where we can put it off as something else? There's just no walking away from that history. And I think it is pertinent to the legal issues that the court has to decide. But I think also on the broader merits, the administration is going to have a very hard time demonstrating that the selection of these 6 countries was something other than arbitrary, and that it was somehow a good indicator of who might later commit an act of terrorism. Because, of course, if that was the criteria, you'd have to put Pakistan or Saudi Arabia or other countries really at the top of the list.
Yep. So I want to ask you about what the president just said. You heard him in that interview saying, quote, wiretap covers a lot of different things. Obviously, according to the dictionary, it doesn't. Wiretap is a very specific term. It means to tap a telephone or telegraph wire. It's an old definition. In order to get information, he's referring to it, he says, more generally. Do you think that's fair or not?
No, I think it's really would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. Wiretap is a wiretap, and particularly when he elaborates that he believed that President Obama was tapping his phones. So I certainly don't think that wiretap is broad enough to cover what is really a baseless accusation, a complete fabrication by the President of the United States. It's certainly not broad enough to cover that. And that is exactly, unfortunately, what is involved here.
So I want to play again a little bit more of what the president said today about the wiretap investigations, because he said more information is coming. You're obviously the one in the investigation. You're seeing it. Here's what he said.
I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks.
You, again, are the one receiving this information on the House Intelligence Committee. Have you seen anything very interesting? Do you have any idea what these things could be and why they would be coming over the next couple weeks?
Sure. First of all, we have seen nothing, no evidence to support the president's claim, nor does anyone really expect to. I think what the president is saying is in 2 weeks, look forward to me giving you another obfuscation, another distortion, another feint. Maybe I'll tell you that in another couple weeks I'll come up with yet another explanation. Of course, over the last couple weeks, we have seen endless permutations by Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway and others as they try to rationalize, make sense of, explain away what you really can't, that he accused his predecessor of being bad and sick and wiretapping him. And I do want to underscore why this is important, because some would write it off as just the president being the president. But first of all, like his comments to Bill O'Reilly when he said, we're no different than Russia, Putin's a killer, but how are we any better? These comments that his predecessor wiretapped him also undermine our democracy. They play into the Russian narrative of things that, yes, Russia, don't make any bones about it, we're a corrupt kleptocracy. We don't really pretend otherwise. So are the Americans. They're just hypocritical about it. And when you have a president of the United States saying basically Putin is right, I've been bugged by my predecessor, we're equally corrupt, that just feeds that whole destructive narrative.
Congressman, one thing, though, that I'm trying to understand, and this is a tough one, right? But we understand there's questions out there, and I ask you, is it possible that there was some sort of surveillance, right, obviously, of Russians who were having conversations with people in Trump Tower, or of Russians who may have been in Trump Tower, right, that there was surveillance that ended up picking up the Trump campaign and things that they said? Is that possible?
Well, you know, it's certainly possible, for example, that when we look at foreign spies talking to each other, that we might collect what's called incidental collection, where either a foreign spy talks to an American or a foreign spy talks to another foreign spy about an American. That's called incidental collection. But of course, that is not only lawful, but it's also not what the president was talking about. He was explicitly talking about Barack Obama bugging him in Trump Tower.
Yeah.
And I don't think he can walk away from that baseless accusation by trying to say, well, you know, somewhere at some point in some country at some time, there may be something that I can hang my hat on.
Of course, he shouldn't be able to walk away from that because there is a very specific definition, and he must be held to account for that. But if there was surveillance and it picked up people in the campaign and it came from some sort of order, FISA, again, we just don't know. You are the one who has the information. If that happened, are you concerned that many Americans may see that as surveillance? They may see that as something that was done against the Trump campaign, and they may see folks like yourself, by adhering to such a technical definition, as being on a witch hunt.
You know, first of all, it's not a technical definition. We're not expecting President Trump to flip through the code book and see how Title 18 defines a wiretap. He used it in, you know, very colloquial terms. Barack Obama tapped my phones. So by his own language, by his own lay terms, or by expert terms, it all adds up to the same thing. Now, we are prohibited from talking about any form of classified information as it pertains to foreign intelligence gathering or a criminal wiretap. We can't discuss that. But, you know, we can discuss this accusation because it is completely without merit. And I think, you know, it's incumbent on us to explain to the public what is lawful surveillance and what isn't, and that what Sean Spicer is saying, what the president's saying, is simply not either logically coherent or possible, because what it means is to say, on the one hand, as they have, the president wasn't subject to an investigation and a court-approved warrant, and on the other hand, we still believe that they were tapping his phones, means that the FBI would have had to have been engaged in some rogue operation, unsupervised and unapproved by a court, and there's simply no evidence of that.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Congressman. Thank you.